Right now we're going to talk about the reviews. And how many of you have actually been through a design review or a code review? A couple of you, and that was in industry? Okay. And I'm going to ask you to feel free to add in something else if I go along. So you imagine this, and I think I alluded to this in previous lectures, but if we use the simple waterfall method, right, where you have requirements, and that pen is not working good, so let's get another one. And requirements then feed into design. We'll call this a high-level design, which feeds into another design. Let's call it a low-level design, which feeds into code. And then, back up the way, then we also look at testing. Remember that? This is the V, right? Well, if you look at the requirements up front, if you set a very bad requirement, what does that affect? Obviously, the high-level design, the low-level design, and the code, as well as everything going up this way, right? The test and the functionality, etc. If you have a bad design, what does that affect? Well, it affects the low-level design and the code, and then, of course, everything on the way up. If you have bad code, what does that affect? Well, the testing up there, and of course, the eventual product, right? So, as you can imagine, as you have these errors that pop up as you go along, how many people are involved as you go up the line? Well, going up the line, what are you doing? You're doing your own little unit test. That may be affected by maybe 5 to 10 people, right? You go up to a functional test or an integration test, suddenly you're involving 20 to 30 people, and then if you go up to a verification, now you are involving everybody in the project, which may be 60 to 100, depending on how big your project is. So as you can imagine, as you're going through requirements design, low-level design or high-level design, low-level design code, etc., where is it best to fix problems? Well, it's good to have good requirements up front, right? Because if you have bad requirements up front, it affects everything. So is it worth it to fix any problems in design, high-level design? Oh yeah, because it affects them and everybody going on up. And then low-level design, yeah, there and everywhere up. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, where does this thing go after verification? It goes out to the real world, right? So it's important to catch mistakes early, because if you have a problem with requirements and you fix them here in the requirements, how much does it cost to fix it? Practically nothing, right? If you have a problem in your code and you find it when it's gone out to the real world, how much does it cost to fix it? An awful lot, doesn't it? Now, at each level, there's more and more things to review and to verify that it is correct. And so the whole reason for what you want to do, called a review, is to ensure that at each step you are passing along a very good product. And so we're going to go through two types of reviews. The first one is we're going to look at some requirements reviews today. And then later on, we're going to go through some high-level reviews next week after I see all of your designs. Now, here's a question I should have. After we go through the requirements review today, all of you will be given recommendations of what to do. Would you really like to change your designs that you just turned in today? Is that yes or no? Yes, all right. Who says no? You want to go with what you have? And of course, nobody's going to say that. So what I'll do is I'll say you'll be able to update your requirements and update your design, and you'll need to do that by Thursday. This Thursday, that's 2 days from today, yeah. Because there's also an assignment due on Tuesday of next week. All right, so there are rules for reviews. So there are rules. The reviews are, or the rules for reviews are as followed. 1, there is one chair of a review. That person is usually the one who gets materials for reviewing from the developer or from or the whoever is being reviewed. I'll call that the reviewee. That person also schedules reviews, which includes which people will look at the review materials. They will also distribute review materials. And on the day review, they will chair the meeting. And even though nowadays, there's a lot of reviews that are going to be going on with teams that are located in different locations, typically you will have people sitting either in Skype or GoToMeeting or NetMeeting or any of the other telecommunications packages, or in a single room, and then they will do the specific design or requirements review. There's another person who is involved, and that is the secretary. And the secretary will be responsible for the minutes of the review. In other words, all of the things that people say and recommend need to be changed will be recorded by the secretary, and then they will also distribute after meeting. Now, sometimes the secretary will do some of these other tasks up here, like schedule the review or distribute review materials. It all depends on their particular organization. So the secretary might have some other things to do. There is, of course, the reviewee, and they also provide materials that are to be reviewed. And then, of course, there are reviewers, and they will read material and offer comments during the meeting. That seems pretty easy. That's kind of logical, right? And I think this is when I talked about how a meeting runs and what you're not supposed to do and what you can do, or what they do. I think I mentioned this before, I had a person I shared an office with who sat in a design review with me, and they basically told the reviewer, "This is the worst pile of garbage I've ever seen. You should be ashamed of yourself." Is that a good way to, let somebody know that they might not have done something correctly? Not really, all right? So you have to be very careful of how you word things and how you actually participate in a review. So, rules for the reviews. Seems pretty logical, right? Some other rules for the reviews, some other suggestions. Number one, it should be no more than an hour. Because pretty much after an hour, people become brain dead and start getting into that really nasty mode, right? Number two, it's not personal. Remember, I think I've mentioned this before, nobody wants to be told that their child is ugly. And so there's two parts of that. Number one, it is not your child. It is an inanimate object or set of bits that can be easily changed, and it doesn't really represent you. All right? Number two, if you're reviewing it, saying, "Can you explain this to me? Because I don't understand how this and this works." And so during the review, the person might say, "Well, it flows through here, it does this and does this." And very often when you do something like that, the person will say, "Oh, I see where you're having the trouble. I forgot to put this and this and this in it. I bet you that if I put this in there, would that make it more understandable?" "Oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense that way." Sometimes directing somebody to having them solve the problem themselves goes a long ways to having them be a very integral part and very important part of this. In other words, not just saying, "You have a mistake here," but saying, "I don't understand that. Can you help me understand it?" And number three, afterwards, what do you think you should do afterwards? Exactly, have a beer. Ooh, wait, this is recorded, isn't it? Yeah, that's all right. Well, okay. But no, afterwards, the materials need to be corrected. And depending on how extensive the changes are, may need to be re-reviewed. If they are extensive changes that need to be done, it should be reviewed again. If there are minor things, usually that could be left to the secretary or the chair to ensure is done. And the materials are hence provided or allowed to be changed. So we have with us Group Snickers. And for the sake of this review, I'm not going to show their names. And so we have different things here, project requirements for the class, and it has a certain number of requirements. And this is going to be the subject of our review, is the requirements. So as what we're going to do is we are going to have an example of a review of this, and I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to have several people involved in this, and we're going to do this up front, and Tejas is going to change the camera so he's closer to us, and you'll all watch it and be absolutely amazed and scared about what's going to go on, all right? So we are going to have the review of the requirements for Team Snickers. I'm your chair, Jim. We also have here our secretary is Aparna. We have reviewers Rahul and Abhishek, and our reviewee is going to be Telwin. So we're going to start out this quick review. Telwin is going to give us a quick 1-minute description of his product and some of the key features of it.
So hello, thank you for being present for the review and your time. So basically we are trying to get a product working that is a remotely controlled LCD display wherein someone can send in some message that needs to be displayed, and the key parameter here would be the person can access it and control it from a far off place, and he doesn't have to be physically present close by. So we've tried to come up with some reviews, some requirements that could help accomplish the goal and define the bounds of this project. So here are the requirements that have been stated.
Sounds great. Sounds very good. All right, now I'm going to open it to the reviewers of this product and or this this set of requirements. Does anybody have any comments?
Okay. So I took a look at your requirements, and one of the vague things that I feel are in the requirements that doesn't absolutely makes no sense to me are, first of all, it says it's remotely controlled. I don't know what it means. Remotely controlled as in you just turn it on and off remotely, or send data, or exactly what? So that's pretty vague to me.
All right, timeout. So, all right, as I said, timeout. Unbeknownst to you, I asked Rahul to be the rude reviewer and to, basically insult you. Did you feel insulted?
Yeah, the no sense part was.
Yeah. Yeah, makes no sense, stuff like that. So, I just want to kind of let you know that that's probably not appropriate to do, okay? So do you have any real comments that you want to cover, or we'll just pass it on to the next person?
This was a real comment, right?
Yeah, but the way you did it, of course, was a little bit rude. All right, we're going to pass it along to, let's do Aparna.
It would be nice if they would have mentioned the range of communication. How remotely can they send the message or information to the display to display it on the device? And one more thing is, they didn't mention anything about the character limit. What if the character limit exceeds? What if the display size, the message that has to be displayed on the LCD is exceeding? They would have incorporated something like a scrolling fashion. The message could be observed in a scrolling fashion. Maybe if they would have added these points, the design would have been better. The requirements would have been better.
Yeah. So basically, the two key elements for this project is the way it will wirelessly communicate with the outside world. So it could be the Zigbee protocol, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth, and also the LCD display. So we have cost targets for this. We are trying to accomplish it in as much cost as possible, as low as possible. So these are the first set of requirements so that the design team can get to the scoping work and get back with some options. So for example, to answer the first question about remotely accessible. So if we come up with a module like, say, Bluetooth is good, so the range will be probably lesser. And if we see quite a good advantage with the Wi-Fi module, we can thereby increase the range. And as far as the characters are concerned, once we scope in all the possible display modules and the display sizes, then we can come up with like what can be displayed at a time, or can we have a running text. So we'll refresh the displays, surely the requirements, surely the points are valid, and we'll enhance the requirements further.
Okay. Do you have any?
Yes.
First off, I would like to start off by saying that the presentation is really amazing in the review, in the requirements that you presented. And however, I have a few comments about this. First off, I concur with both of my fellow reviewers on this. There isn't enough detail about how remotely it can be controlled. If you could elaborate a little bit more on that, it will be great. Then the second issue which I would like to address is you mentioned in your power requirements that this will have at least a 4-month battery life. So I was just wondering how you could accomplish this within the given budget, considering all of your requirements are they are pretty luxurious.
Yeah, regarding the range, like I said, we still need to scope the possible modules that we can use for this project. And when it comes to the 4-month battery life, that is the ideal scenario. We would like to have that much. But once we finalize the circuit, we could have a realistic number. And maybe, who knows, maybe we could probably accomplish the 4 months, given probably the e-ink display. We might possibly achieve it, given the fact that we come up and find a cheap display that is economical. So we could refresh those numbers once we have solid modules in place.
Right. So do we have enough comments in place for you to make a revision to this?
Yes.
Okay. So what we'll rely on you, Aparna, if you could send out the minutes of this meeting so that Telwyn could actually do the, ensure that all of the points that we addressed we covered are addressed on his design. I believe there are sufficient enough of these comments to have another review.
Yes.
So if we could have the minutes put out as soon as possible, see if we can have a review in about another week. Sounds good? All right, well, thank you very much. But don't record, don't stop recording, because, all right, so this was an example of a review, and it was a short review. The person who reviews, or I should say the chair of the review, can also cover some comments as well. They could be a reviewer as well. And the chair is also, notice how there are people here, because you want to ensure that everybody not only has an opportunity to say something, but they actually are put on the spot and do something, because sometimes people who are identified as reviewers don't really do their job and kind of hope to skate. So you want to make sure that they're a participant. And everybody was very nice and offered good comments, except for our person who was identified to have to be a mean reviewer. All right. So this was an example of a design review. And that is it for the recorded part of this lecture. Thank you.